Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks and one of the United States government's most wanted men, has been facing criminal charges here in this country for quite some time, but the case has been on hold because Julian Assange has not been in this country. He's been over in the UK, sitting, rotting away in a prison there, and for a long time, the United States government has been demanding that he be sent over to this country so that he can, in fact, be prosecuted, so that the case can move forward. But the UK government has said, no, that's not going to happen. Until very recently, the UK High Court came out and issued a ruling that we're going to talk about today. And we're going to have to get our bearings straight on the Julian Assange case because the prosecution is going to pick right back up. As usual, let's take a look at the mind map so we can take a look at all the various components of the Julian Assange WikiLeaks case. If you're not familiar, of course you are. You've heard his name. He's the founder of WikiLeaks. This has been something that has been around for since 2006. He published a number of documents around 2010, I believe it was, that came from Chelsea Manning. Chelsea Manning, of course, was somebody who had access to a lot of very sensitive documents. We're going to learn more about her in a little bit. Julian Assange, right now, he's age 50. He also published Hillary Clinton's emails. He was being held under asylum provisions in the Ecuadorian embassy for a long period of time, but he's been in a Belmarsh maximum security prison since 2019. A lot of good information, of course, over at wikileaks.org. They have a whole defense section over there. Also some good information about this case at challengepower.info/start. And over there, there's a photograph that looks just like this. And you can see kind of the massive web that exists here of all the different stuff going on. Now, if you go and this is a high resolution document, if you look in this, you'll see that multiple different countries, multiple different defense intelligence agencies. We've got major corporations, people like Google. We've got Joe Biden. We've got, corporations all over the world. A lot of stuff is going on here because WikiLeaks was sort of the repository for a lot of data being funneled into this one central hub, and then they would just publish it. So they would just say, hey, we have the ability to just sort of take this stuff and host it and make sure that you as the source are not going to be put in harm's way by sending us this data, and they put it out to the world. And so a lot of people sent them stuff, they posted a lot of stuff, and they embarrassed a lot of people, a lot of powerful individuals throughout the world. And so now the United States is going to continue with their prosecution of Julian Assange, of course, provided that he does end up back in the United States, which presumably he will. And so let's understand what's happening. We can see, if we go over to the courts section of the mind map, that we've got the UK High Court, which just issued a ruling talking about extradition. And so we're going to take a look at that, learn a little bit more about Lord Burnett as well. But we got to understand first and foremost what's happening with these charges. Why is the US government prosecuting him in the first place? It has been some time, actually several years, since the original indictment came forward, but we're going to take a look at the most recent indictment here from June 24th, 2020, and then we'll sort of fast forward and take a look at the docket from December of 2021. Okay, the superseding indictment just means it's kind of the most recent indictment. We've made some changes, we've modified it. It's the most up-to-date version of the Word document, as it were. And so you can take a look here. We have the full indictment that is attached to this mind map, and this mind map is going to be available over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, which is our community. And so if you scroll through this document, you can see this was filed June 24th, 2020. Now, there was additional documents that were filed previously. This is the second or maybe the third indictment, but a lot of the same charges remain. You can see count 1 is going to be conspiracy to obtain and disclose national defense information. So that's the conspiracy portion of this. It's to go and get it. Hasn't gotten it, but he engaged in a conspiracy to go get sensitive data. Then there's a conspiracy to commit computer intrusion. So that would be the hacking portion. It's engaging with other individuals to go and break into computers. Then we've got sort of several different similar charges. So we've got counts 3 and 4, which is going to actually be obtaining those things. So you engage in a conspiracy to go and do the hacking. Then you actually engage in a conspiracy to go and get and disclose those things. Then you actually get them, and then you actually disclose them. And so you can see counts 3, 4, that's obtaining. Counts 5 through 8, also obtaining. And then 9 through 11, 12 through 14, and 15 through 17, that's all the disclosure. So they agreed to go and hack it. They hacked it. They got it. They disclosed it. Kind of a 4-step process, and then they are disclosing it. So this is a very long indictment. And we're not going to go through the whole thing. You can see it's 49 pages here, but we can just flash through some of it. Assange and WikiLeaks. From at least 2007, Julian Assange was the public face of WikiLeaks, a website he founded with others as, quote, an intelligence agency of the people. To obtain this information, he recruited sources, and they all provided information to him. And part of that recruiting process was that they would maybe even, obtain stuff illegally and provide that illegally obtained stuff that was leaked over to WikiLeaks. So nothing really groundbreaking there. It continues, it says to recruit individuals, they would post, the most wanted leaks of things organized by country. And so they sort of had a checklist, and they'd go out there and they'd say, hey, we want this stuff, go and get it. They appeared at a number of different security conferences all over the place. Chelsea Manning from 2009 to 2010, back then was known as Bradley Manning before she transitioned, actually at that time held a top secret security clearance. And so Chelsea Manning went through and obtained a bunch of stuff. Got in there on November 28, 2009, turned in a classified network search engine, had a text file that she saved. Search terms were consistent with the most wanted leaks. So Chelsea Manning went on WikiLeaks and said, oh, this is one of their most wanted. This is kind of their hit list of documents. I can go get that stuff. And Chelsea Manning went and did it. On March 8th, when Manning brought up the OSC, meaning the CIA Open Source Center, Assange said, that's something we want to mine entirely, by the way, right? So they're having conversations about this. Assange is directly talking to Manning about it to go and pull these documents. Manning continues the conversation in March 2010 with Assange, and you can see it's just a big laundry list of all these conversations. It's early 2010. Another source provides Assange with some other stuff, comes from NATO. We have these hacking groups, Anonymous, Anti-Sec, Lulz-Sec, which we'll talk about. Number of different disclosures all the way through 2011, and it just keeps going. So you can see that they have a big dossier of documents that support it. And if we just fast forward all the way through this document, we can sort of start looking and scrolling through the counts. Here, count 4, this was the Iraq Rules of Engagement files. They obtained it, they disclosed it. So that's going to be a count. And they're breaking these up by the various disclosures. The items that Chelsea Manning would have obtained or anybody else would have obtained and then disclosed. Here, detainee assessment briefs under count 9. And so you can see how this continues on. Count 10, the State Department cables, additional leaks, different batches. Count 11, we have Iraq Rules of Engagement files. Count 12, we have detainee assessment briefs. 13, State Department cables, and so on. And so that is the superseding indictment. So this was filed on June 24th, 2020. And so, okay, now that's processing through the court. But Julian Assange is not here. He's not actually in the United States. Where is he? Well, he's in the UK. He's in the Ecuadorian asylum. And he is not available to go through the criminal proceedings in the United States. And so if we take a look at the court docket, you can see it just kind of came to a screeching halt. You'll notice here it says on 4/26/2019, well, we've got just a couple letters that are being filed. The superseding indictment, there was one filed back in 2019. That's not the one that we read. We went through this one, another one, a second superseding indictment, which then came out on June 24th. And then it was just basically stopped after that happened. There was an arrest warrant that was issued in this case as to Julian Assange. And that's it. It's stopped. No more case activity. And I pulled this this screenshot from the docket here on 12/14/2021. And if you're a subscriber and you follow this mind map, of course, is going to grow dynamically as this case continues to evolve in the United States, and we'll continue to update it with the latest screenshots. So all this is taking place out of the Eastern District of Virginia, where a lot of these data files are housed, of course. A lot of the intelligence agencies are within that jurisdiction, and so we can close that up. So you see that per the docket, back in June, they just kind of put the case on hold. We have an arrest warrant that was issued. All right, well, Julian Assange isn't here. We can't institute a criminal proceeding against him when he's not here. So we're just going to issue this warrant. We're going to go try to get him over in the UK. Turns out the UK says, yeah, you can have him. The UK now, if we go back and take a look at their high court, we see that the UK high court approved the extradition. This is just a quick screenshot of what the cover sheet looks like. Royal Courts of Justice and the High Court of Justice, the Queen's Bench Division. This is over the Administrative Court, the government of the United States of America, and Julian Assange. This is before the Lord Burnett of Maldon, the Lord Chief Justice of England and Wales, which is just a heck of a title. That's this guy over here. You can see that's what he looks like. We have an image of his bio. Here it says he studied law at Pembroke College, called to the bar 1980, became a pupil. Practice was in common law and public law. South All rail crash. Appointed to the High Court in 2008. Appointed Lord Chief in 2017. Sits in both criminal and civil divisions over in the UK. And so the UK, they gave us this extradition ruling. Here's what that looks like. You can see another large document, but we'll just take a look at a couple of the highlights. Here it says, Lord Burnett of Maldon, the guy we just read about, says this is the judgment of the court, to which we've all contributed. Following an extradition hearing that lasted many weeks before the judge, on January 4th, a prior judge said that Julian Assange cannot be extradited. Why? His mental condition is such that it would be oppressive to extradite him. That testimony was laid down previously. And if it's satisfied, it bars extradition. So the background, of course, we know. We talked a lot about that. Julian Assange, WikiLeaks, was disclosing a lot of materials throughout his organization. Various individuals wanted him to stand trial. He has been investigated for various crimes in Sweden. He left the Ecuadorian assembly. He's been housed in British custody ever since. They talk about the rules. They talk about the adult detention center, and more specifically, the critical care and the mental health unit. Judge says, having considered evidence on both sides, the prior judge said that there's a real risk if he is sent over to the United States. So we fast forward all the way down. You can see that they're laying out a lot. We jump to the conclusion, and you can see the High Court out of the UK is saying, for the reasons that they just set forth, we reject some of the grounds of the appeal, but we allow the appeal, this is from the U.S. government, on grounds 2 and 5. And so accordingly, they quashed the order discharging Mr. Assange. So a different court said, no, that order has been quashed that would have excused Mr. Assange from being extradited to the United States. We remit this case to the Westminster Magistrate Court with the direction to proceed as though the prior judge would have been required, do what the judge would have done if she had decided the case differently. In other words, if the judge had found previously that Assange's mental health condition was sufficient, it was strong enough that he could be extradited, then do whatever would have been done had she decided that way. So the UK High Court saying, Julian Assange, the mental condition and the entire analysis justifies his extradition. And so just go back and reinterpret the case as though that's how it would have been decided, as though the judge would have found that he was mentally competent to be transferred and extradited out of the UK into the United States. And so we can see that's what's going on with the court out of the MINDMAP. And so the arrest warrant that, of course, came out of the U.S. government, this was back in June of 2020. We can see we have just a little bit of a cover sheet here, and there's some interesting details that we can pull out of this. Let's see if we can pull up the PDF and zoom in a little bit. Here, a lot of this, of course, is going to be redacted. This is the cover sheet, a criminal case cover sheet. This is not actually the official warrant. The warrant was sealed, as I'm going to show you in a minute. We don't have access to it, but this was assigned. We can see it's the same case number, 118 CR11, if you want to look it up. Where is Julian Assange? He's before arrest in the United Kingdom. He's over in Knightsbridge, London. Employment, he's a founder of WikiLeaks 6.2. Arrest warrant is being requested. The assistant U.S. attorneys, we're going to learn about this guy who signed off on this, Gordon Kromberg. And we've got 18 different felony charges. Special Agent Megan Brown, also at the FBI, was involved in the underlying investigation. You can see when you go and attempt to take a look at the search warrant, it is going to be showing us a sign that says you do not have permission to view this document. So that's kind of what's going on with the courts. We've got the Eastern District of Virginia. We've got the UK High Court. And we know that until Assange is back in United States custody, that warrant will not be satisfied. So we're not going to have another court date until he's back in custody, until the U.S. has their hands on him. That warrant will then be quashed. They'll assign a new court date. He'll be arraigned and he'll go through that entire formal process. So now that we know a little bit more about the court proceeding, let's just take a look at what's going on with law enforcement. Law enforcement, of course, this branch is going to be something that is very extensive. As I was explaining earlier, there's a lot of different agencies who are very interested in Julian Assange. Different intelligence agencies from all over the world want sort of their hands on this guy. U.S. government is no different. Special Agent Megan Brown over from the FBI was involved in this case. She submitted an affidavit back in 2017. Here's a quick preview of this. Again, very, very detailed. A lot of information in these things. This is 40 pages. A lot of the times these affidavits are not. For example, if we're talking about a January 6th case, for example, those affidavits, well, actually, those are pretty long too. It just sort of depends. Some of them are long, some of them are not. But this is a pretty long one. You can see it says, I'm Megan Brown, Special Agent FBI. I work in counterterrorism, counterintelligence. I have received classroom training. I've investigated all sorts of different crimes, been doing this for a long time. My facts that I list here are all pursuant to my observations. Here's what's going on. Chelsea Manning was an intelligence analyst at the U.S. Army, got access to significant information, leaked all this information over to WikiLeaks. Cracking the password would have allowed Manning to log on to computers. And so what this special agent is doing is just detailing, again, all of the conversations and all of the violations between Manning and Julian Assange and WikiLeaks and everybody else who was involved in this whole investigation. So very, very big, long document. Assange encourages Manning to continue searching for the document. So he's sort of like a co-conspirator, kind of giving her guidance on exactly how to do this and walking her through. And you can see that we have some actual, attachments that are attached here, talking about the sender account, who is sending to whom, what's the alias, when were these things sent, what was the message that was there. And you can see it looks like they're actually having conversations about how to go and access certain data. So all of this was being submitted by an FBI agent. And allegedly, one of the organizations that was sort of involved, a co-conspirator, was this organization called LulzSec. Apparently, they were actually working with the FBI. And they were maybe within the purview of WikiLeaks. Some of the same people are overlapping between one agency and the other. And so this was an organization you can see here that was sort of around back in 2011, right around the same time that a lot of this stuff was going on. They claimed responsibility for taking down the CIA website and some other things like that. And so they're a part of this ecosystem for some time. Chelsea Manning was the original leaker over to WikiLeaks. And if you don't recall Chelsea Manning, the name was originally, back when this was happening, Bradley Edward Manning. And Bradley Edward transitioned to Chelsea Manning sometime relatively recently, I think, and then ran for Senate. Yeah, in 2018, Manning ran for Senate. Now, Manning was charged with 22 offenses for similar violations. President Barack Obama commuted that sentence to nearly 7 years of confinement, dating back to her arrest in 2010. So then Manning was released, and she then ran for Senate. And so now that we know who some of the alleged co-conspirators were, or some of the actual co-conspirators who pled guilty, take a look at some of the prosecutors. We saw that Gordon Kromberg was the person who actually signed off on the arrest warrant, and he's also the same person who entered his notice of appearance over as part of the trial. Of the new filing, we can see here from the court docket that his name is here, Gordon Kromberg, notices to filing of the docket. So he's part of the government's team who's going to be prosecuting Assange. We learn a little bit more about him. We can see his bio from, this was a speaking engagement that he was a part of. Mr. Gordon Kromberg, he's Assistant U.S. Attorney, Eastern District of Virginia. He served since 1991. He's been the lead prosecutor in many cases of defendants attempting to support Al-Qaeda and ISIS and other terrorist groups. After 9/11, Gordon served on the United States Justice Department Terrorist Financing Task Force, helped coordinate a nationwide enforcement effort to combat terrorist financing, went to Princeton, New York University of Law, retired Lieutenant Colonel, United States Army Judge Advocate Generals as well. And so he's over with the U.S. Attorney's Office, presumably from the Eastern District of Virginia. A little more information there. And Julian Assange, he's got some allies, of course, over at WikiLeaks. He's got, an entire organization there behind him. So we've got some information about them. Their headlines from 12/14. They were talking about U.S. Embassy shopping lists, talking about different procurement requests. Amazon Atlas publishes highly confidential internal documents about the cloud computing provider. We have deal makers. And so you can see WikiLeaks is still up and active, and they're still doing stuff. More information over there. Kristen Raffinson is the editor-in-chief over there. That's this guy. Stella Morris is Julian Assange's fiance and also a lawyer. She's very involved in helping him. And so she's put out a lot of statements. They have 2 sons together, Gabriel 3, 19-month-old Max. Couple, they had 2 children while he was in the embassy back in Ecuador. She's 37. She's a lawyer. She's part of his legal team. She's lived in London for almost 30 years. So they've got 2 kids together, and she, of course, is supporting him. And then we have this guy, Barry J. Pollock. He's a lawyer out of the United States, and presumably after Julian Assange is extradited back to the United States, this guy will be a bigger point of contact because the case will start to pick up. They're going to quash that warrant. He represents individuals in criminal investigations and other enforcement proceedings against, SEC and various organizations, certified public accountant, Fortune 500 companies. People have called him incredibly gifted, and so it sounds like he is a very competent, solid, and good lawyer. And Julian Assange is going to need that. And so we do not have an upcoming court date yet. We will as soon as we see some activity over here. This court docket is going to be updated. We're going to see that there is a quashing of a warrant, and we'll see a new court date be set, probably an arraignment. We'll see some formal notices of appearance and a lot more activity. And this mind map will continue to grow and evolve as the case evolves. As the case continues to unfold in front of us, we'll continue to break this out, see what the government is intending to do and why they are continuing to prosecute this man. And I hope you follow along with us. Don't forget before you leave to hit that subscribe button. We do have a live show that we do weekdays here on the channel called Watching the Watchers. We have an amazing community at watchingthewatchers.locals.com where this mind map and many others that we've talked about, Ghislaine Maxwell, Alec Baldwin, we've got just some that are just always kind of constantly evolving and growing because the cases continue to change. And so go and check that out at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Don't forget to leave a like before you get out of here, and I appreciate a comment, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.